Welcome, everyone. My name is Ashish Kaushal. I'm CEO of HireTalent and founder of Consciously Unbiased, an organization focused on unlocking the power of your people in the workplace. Today's conversation I'm really excited about. We're going to be covering well-being at work. The average person spends more than 80,000 hours at work over the course of their lifetime. So our workplaces have a big impact on our mental health and well-being. From burnout to supporting caregivers to belonging, our panelists will cover some of the biggest well-being trends to pay attention to in your workplace for 2026. Let's start off by introducing our special guests. Dr. Plummer, CEO of Onyx Therapy Group. Welcome.
Thank you.
Michael Perry, founder and CEO of Maple.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Katie Christiansen, Senior Director, Talent Development, HRBP at Spotify.
Hi.
Hi. And then Daisy Auger Dominguez, Chief People Officer, speaker, and author of Burnt Out to Lit It Up.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome, my friend. And then Dr. Mary Mobile from TOLA, Principal Research and Writing.
Hi, excited to be here.
Happy to have you as well. And then Kimberly Braithwaite, HR leader, formerly University of Rochester.
Hello. Nice to see everybody.
Welcome. I'm so happy to have you on the show. And that companies are prioritizing well-being. In the report, it's about 20% higher productivity. At the same time, they said that workplace conditions contributed to at least one mental health challenge. So let's start off with the basics. What does workplace that prioritize well-being look like to you? Who would like to go first?
I can start us off.
Okay.
So I think that a workplace that truly prioritizes well-being is intentional, consistent, and really it's built into the culture. It's not just perks or posters. So for example, from a leadership perspective, leaders are modeling the behavior. They're taking time off, they're respecting boundaries, their transparency is the norm. Mistakes are treated like opportunities and not ammunition. Psychological safety is strong. Employees feel safe speaking up without retaliation. And then inclusion isn't just a program, it's how meetings, decisions, and communication is done.
I love that. And Daisy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a culture that prioritizes well-being, where people can do great work without sacrificing themselves and their humanity, right? It's where we treat energy as infrastructure, where we build clarity into how work gets done, where we create space for people to reset before things break, when we let people be human.
No, absolutely. And why do we have to give up something to get something, by the way?
And I love that, Ashish, and I could bring in my thoughts around well-being too, because from the position that I sit in around intersections of identity, I think that well-being in the workplace allows for a person to bring their full self, all of their cultural identity, all of their cultural norms, and they're not sacrificing any parts of themselves at work. You know, historically, we've compartmentalized work from person, but I think that has negative impacts on our mental health. And so I think that well-being at work means that I could embrace me as a Black person, embrace me as a woman, embrace me as a parent, embrace all the skills and talents and cultures that I have, and not try to make me piecemeal or compartmentalize aspects of who I am. Because when I could bring the fullness of myself to work, I bring the highest level of productivity as well.
No, absolutely. And Michael?
I've always really taken the stance that to really establish a good environment at work, the leader has to establish him or herself as the common denominator. Oftentimes people who are in leadership positions live a significantly easier day in and day out life than someone who's the entry-level employee at a business. They don't feel the same pains or stresses, or they have access to resources that someone who might be at the lowest place in the company might be at. Mm-hmm. So for myself personally, I've always tried, whether I was a executive operator at a big publicly traded company or within my own business, to really be the beacon or the tide that rises all boats. And if I'm going to practice my kids' practices, I expect everyone to be able to go to my kids' practices. If I have access to a therapist or an executive coach, I expect to create that access point to my team to have an executive or a therapist. If I have access to a house cleaner, then we should try to create allowances so that everyone on my team can have a house cleaner. And that way, we're all on the same or as close to the same level playing field as possible. Have a healthy work environment.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you're saying that, and honestly, funny enough, Dr. Plummer and I about 2 years ago, we were doing a LinkedIn Live, and we ended up creating a series called Know Thyself, and it's a lot about, for you to be a good manager, a good leader, you really need to be more honest with yourself and understand who you are as a person, and then also to reduce corporate liability. If you know what your trigger points are, and don't hire people that push on those things. And so, when you get promoted in corporate America, we tend to put you through manager training when we should really put you through how do you function as a person training, because especially men don't relate to we're not in touch with what triggers us. We just know we get cranky for some reason. Katie, I'd love to have you go next.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I really agree with everything that's been said so far. And I think there's also, there's this sort of constant journey of trying to strike a balance between having consistency for people in the workplace. So consistent expectations, consistent messaging, consistent levels of transparency, sort of a consistent experience, but also trying to find the nuance of and recognizing the fact that we are all so different. We are all at different stages of our life. We all have different home circumstances. We're all going to require different things at different stages of our journey. And I think that's just a constant evolution. I think we can only ever hope to sort of get close to that balance. I don't know if we'll ever strike that balance fully. But I think keeping that top of mind as you're thinking about the culture you're building, as you're thinking about the policies and the practices you're putting into place, is how can you create both one experience, but one that allows for nuances and differences in people's experiences and identities.
Absolutely. I love that. And then Tola?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said already. I just wanted to add on to that. It's really important not just to normalize flexibility and well-being, but to really celebrate those things, because there's still a stigma around creating work-life balance and around flexible work, and it's especially a stigma for women. So I just co-authored the Lean In and McKinsey's Women in the Workplace report, which came out this week. And we saw that women are much less likely to get promoted when they work remotely, whereas remote work barely impacts men's careers because their commitment and their productivity tend to be taken for granted. And so I think what we need to see to have true well-being for everyone and have that be egalitarian is for workplaces to meaningfully shift norms and policies and meaningfully shift leadership behaviors so that, looking after yourself and your well-being.
Interesting. Why is it that work from home affects women differently than men? Are they assuming that men are just doing stuff?
Yeah, no, it's in the research, people tend to assume that women are doing things around the house or they're looking after their children. I mean, it's to do with really, really old school stereotypes that we still haven't broken free of. We're relatively used to seeing women at work, but we also tend to assume that they're doing more at home. And that actually is true. But it doesn't mean that they're less productive. It doesn't mean that they're less committed. It doesn't mean that during the workday they're off doing something else. But people do make those assumptions still. Whereas when men are working from home, we tend to assume that they're just being really laser focused.
Oh, and not playing video games?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Well, it's fascinating that you note that, because also one of the findings from the Women in the Workplace report is higher rates of burnout for women, precisely because they are carrying a higher workload in the office and at home and across the board.
Yeah.
So regardless of where they are, they're working harder than everyone else.
I know. Yeah. And we see that particularly for senior level women who actually tend to do more at home, relative to senior level men. So they're really kind of carrying the world on their shoulders.
Very interesting. Katie, Spotify is focused on whole person care. Can you share how you define what whole person care is, and how does it reflect in Spotify's cultures and policies?
Yeah, for sure. So we, I think, are very proud of that focus, and I think among tech companies, it's sort of one of our differentiators in terms of how we approach our culture and how we believe that genuinely drives business impact. So, we also are a Swedish company, which I think many people don't realize, but we are Swedish. Our founders are Swedish. We have a lot of Swedish leadership. And I think we benefit from sort of being Swedish by design and sort of by origin, because I think Sweden just is a little bit more of a socially progressive country in some ways. But I think it's really, we have sort of the luxury of honestly having had this baked into and built into our culture really from sort of like the origin story. This wasn't something that we had to go on a big campaign to get people on board with and convince leaders. It's really important that we focus on whole person. And if we have happy people, we'll have great business. So we had a lot of really organic buy-in and belief in that. But what we do is, we really try to think about meeting people where they are. And, that sort of is why I spoke about sort of having the one experience, one consistent sort of experience and set of expectations and sort of culture for people, but still being able to support and people in different phases of their life. So we have a very big focus on mental health. It's something that we talk a lot about. We've been talking a lot about it and very openly about it internally for a long time. We're super proud of it. I mean, I think it's been really nice to see it normalized more and more in the workplace. And I think what we've seen is that we're able to support people so much earlier on in their journey. If they do, we work in a really an intense environment. We're in an intense industry. Like, expectations are high. It's tough, but I don't think that has to, our belief is that just because you choose to work in this industry doesn't mean you can't also have good mental health and a lot of support. So by normalizing it, by talking about it a lot, by offering support, sort of community circles and networks, and also external support, I think people just feel comfortable bringing it up so much sooner so that we can work with people before it becomes, a really big challenge or problem for them at work or at home. So I think our focus on mental health has been really well received. And I think it's just been, I think it's one of the things that I think people care a lot about here. We also, from a sort of more holistic well-being standpoint, do something every year. It started during COVID, and I think some other companies did this for a year or two and then sort of quietly backed out, but we've very proudly committed to it. And we just finished our 5th year of what we call Wellness Week, where we basically shut the company down for a week in October, at the end of October, so that everybody is off for the same period of time, for the same amount of time. It doesn't come out of PTO, it's additional PTO. But the idea behind it is not just, let's give people extra vacation time. It's let's give people extra time so that we all come back starting on the same page. I think we've all been probably taking a vacation and you come back to work and you have a wall of emails and everyone's been sort of progressing and you have to catch up. The idea here is that everyone goes off, everyone comes back, we're all starting back on the same foot. And I think we've heard so loudly from our people that this is one of the most important things that we've rolled out, and it's why we've kept doing it. So I think we just try to see people as people and understand that sometimes life gets hard. We're very supportive of parents. We have a lot of programming around parents and families and family forming. So I could go on and on, but I'm gonna stop because I know I've been rambling for a minute. But
have you seen as a result of this that you've increased retention and reduced burnout?
Yeah, we have very low attrition, and we have our average tenure keeps going up and up and up year over year. Like, we really have people that have stuck around for a long time. And, we have people who started here as, young single people who have had, built a whole family over their tenure at Spotify, which I think is really cool. Yeah. We have people who have gone through so many different life transitions while being an employee here. And I think knowing that they have the support to be able to do that while they're still doing really good, meaningful, impactful work, it just, it's really sticky. Like, it gives people a real reason to keep wanting to show up every day. So we've been really pleased with how it's been genuinely valuable to the business in terms of lowering turnover and longer tenure and all of the good metrics that you like to see. So
yeah, I love that, because I think a lot of people associate all these wellness benefits as perks, but they don't realize it actually helps the bottom line and
100%
retention and stuff like that. And so I think it's important to always highlight that. Michael, you at Maple, the Maple app helps families stay connected and share household responsibilities. Can you talk about how companies can better support caregivers and normalize caregiving in the workplace for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, in my personal opinion, one of my greatest regrets was being a married guy with no kids in a very important leadership role at a big company and having zero empathy for people with children at home. I think that every company, if the people at the top aren't parents themselves, or executive leaders aren't parents themselves, I think every company should form a parent advisory council and really think about how the workplace is set up to support working parents. I don't think anyone has a clue how challenging it is to maintain a full-time job while doing your life's work at home. One of the greatest fallacies in poor advertising of our time is that we've sold people that doing their life's work is what is in exchange of a paycheck, when that is just simply not the case. I loved how Katie said that Spotify is Swedish by design. We definitely at Maple are family first by design. And what that looks like for us is we don't do happy hours as a company expecting people to stick around virtually at 5 p.m. when they should be at home caregiving their children or being with their loved ones. We do celebratory events on company time, middle of the day. We believe that it is a necessity to offer work remote and flexibility for working parents. I mean, there's a laundry list of things that people could do to try to ease the weight of the world. I think Daisy said it, or Dr. Plummer said it. I think the parents of today are Atlas, the Greek god, who have the earth on their back. And carrying that load every single day, you're not going to get the highest level of performance. And I just think that we're in a unique opportunity in time for people to give one another more grace and to treat people like humans and to just try to create an environment that allows for them to be everybody's everything. And you're set up that way.
Is caregiving including taking care of your parents and elderly?
Absolutely. Caregiving is poorly branded. It's being a lot of responsibility. I have friends who have this handicap or brothers or sisters with special needs that they're caregivers for. And I just think that we have boxed people in from a caregiving perspective, thinking that that's a standalone profession, when it is our actual purpose, duty, and responsibility to love one another and show up for one another. And just giving people the decency to be a family member is crazy that we just don't give them that kind of leeway.
Yeah, I mean, how focused can you be on a task at work if something's happening at home and you're not allowed to handle it?
Impossible.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're making that family first as a priority. Mary, the annual Women in the Workplace report just came out. It found that in the past year, 4 out of 10 report frequent burnout on top of the burnout. The highest levels of employee discontent in 5 years. What do you think is behind this increase, and what can we do in workplaces to do better at supporting women at work?
Those are such good questions. I just want to pause on that number because it's staggeringly high. Even at the height of the COVID pandemic, we weren't seeing burnout numbers this high. And then as to what's behind it, in our data, we found one of the strongest factors this year is job insecurity. And that isn't maybe too much of a surprise given the recent economic uncertainty and the waves of layoffs we've seen in the news. But then in addition to that, there are three other driving factors that always contribute to workplace burnout. And one is excessive workload. That's the one everyone knows about. The second is having limited autonomy. So being micromanaged or feeling like you don't have control in your day-to-day work. And then the third is experiencing unfair treatment. And companies really need to address all three of those factors. So companies can combat overwork in all sorts of ways. Obviously, design workloads realistically, but also provide genuine flexibility. That's a drum I like to keep beating, and make sure all employees can use it. And flexibility also helps employees have more autonomy, which addresses the second driver of burnout. And then also managers should be trained to coach and mentor their reports, and really get away from micromanaging them, so employees feel more agency day to day. And then for the third factor, this is such a big to-do for companies, but it's really important for them to prioritize fair treatment and respect for everyone. Because when employees feel unfairly treated and disrespected, then burnout will rise. And I just want to say companies benefit from doing all of this to combat burnout as well, because these high burnout rates mean you have a workforce with reduced morale, and you have a lot of employees wanting to leave. And we actually saw in our data this year, fully half of all employees have seriously thought about quitting their jobs in the last 12 months, which is a lot. So I think, and wanting to quit your job is also highly correlated with feeling burned out. So reducing burnout really helps companies meet their bottom line goals as well.
Interesting. So do you think, I mean, you said there's more burnout now than during COVID when everyone is at home managing their life and their family at the same time. Do you think, I mean, I feel like this year we basically crushed DEI and said DEI, anything treating people nicely at work is an offense. And so do you think that's part of the increase in burnout is because we're not allowed to treat people nicely and just expect them to work?
So I don't have data directly speaking, tying those two things together, but I definitely think that like if you down prioritize a respectful culture, then that seems like that's just naturally going to impact burnout and increase burnout. But I think, I feel like it's kind of a perfect storm where, maybe disrespect might be on the rise. We know that people are feeling more pressure in all sorts of ways, economic pressure, pressure to get more work done, etc. It's just many different factors.
Interesting. Daisy, what are your thoughts around that?
I mean, I agree. I think we're seeing burnout at a higher rate across every single industry, across every gender, across every level. And there are contributing factors that, from Gallup to McKinsey to Lean In, that we're seeing in terms of structural workplace challenges that have just persisted.
Yeah.
Political environments where, and socioeconomic environments where we have workers that are going into workplaces from environments that are particularly strained and challenged. And then you're coming into workplace, highest level of layoffs that we've seen across various industries in the last year. So the uncertainty alone, the volatility alone, the instability economically and socially and politically, you tie that all to lack of proper work design and operational workflows in organizations, and then the cultural challenges that we're facing, and it's a surefire, lead up to burnout.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Daisy, in your book, Burnout to Lit Up, describes your personal journey to burnout with the rise of remote work and working in different time zones, expectations to always be on and increase, and it can increase burnout. What are some strategies you recommend that people can do to thrive both at work and home and sort of still get things done, but not feel guilty about burnout?
And this question in so many ways gets to the heart of why so many people are feeling stretched thin right now. The remote work and global teams have given us flexibility, which is what we've been asking for many years, but they've also blurred every boundary we once relied on. And so when everything can happen everywhere at any time, our nervous systems don't get the signals that they need to power down. And that's in many cases when burnout creeps in. When we talk about work-life integration, right? That term, for work-life balance, integration or whatnot, I think about it as work-life alignment, designing your days in a way that supports your humanity, your energy, your ambitions, right? And again, Lean In's report identifying it's not necessarily that women are less ambitious, they just don't want to burn out because of their ambitions, right? So a few strategies that I recommend. The first is to build personal hours and protect them. Right? It's not just build them, because we can say we do them, but we have to protect them. So instead of thinking in terms of strict boundaries, I think of it as rhythms, right? Yeah. What is your on hour? Where are your deep work windows? What are your legit off hours, right? And then you communicate them clearly. You put them in your connected, because most people will honor what you articulate with confidence, not just what you say in a wishy-washy way. I think that it's really helpful to create closing rituals that tell your brain that the workday is done. right? This is my office. And, physically leaving my office alone and going into the rest of my home space is, it's not enough for me to not be thinking that my laptop is still on, right? So for remote workers, the hardest part of the day is stopping. So a 5-minute reset, closing your laptop fully, not just halfway, right? Taking a short walk, turning on music, whatever helps your nervous system transition to this next phase of life. Comes small rituals that can create a whole lot of relief. And then I'll say, I guess, like use your energy, not your time, as your primary resource. In Burnt Out to Lit Up, I talk about the replenishment loop, right? Noticing what drains you, what restores you, right? And then designing your days and your weeks accordingly. So when you anchor your day in your highest energy moments, you show up clearer, right? These are when we're most present, where we're better at decision making and creativity and innovation, right? And then when we know where our downtimes are, this is where we can, steep in and add into our calendar those moments of rest, those breaks, those different conversations during the day. So using your energy as a way of building your calendar.
Is it also important to leave your house on a vacation once in a while? Because if you mixed work and home together and now there's really no difference, then just to recharge, is that something?
Yeah, I mean, you need different spaces. Right? Like there was, I think everything has changed since COVID, right? So like staycations are no longer staycations because we're still tied to the computer. We can still work, right? So, and some of us are better than others. And I speak as the parent of a teenager, and I am constantly telling my daughter to get off the phone. And by the same token, 2 minutes later, she'll look at me and she'll say, "Mama, get off the phone." Right? So we also have to take our own medicine and look in the mirror.
100%. Dr. Plummer, you have a new book coming out next month, The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women, a roadmap for mental health professionals to help guide Black women and other marginalized communities in their health journeys. How can leaders better create workplaces that are psychologically safe for everybody?
Hey, I love that, Ashish. Yes, here's my book, y'all. I'm so excited about it. But listen, I was sitting here. Thank you. I was sitting here listening to everyone, and I forgot that I was on the panel. I was just listening and taking notes and getting all the things. So I'm excited to be here with you all and to learn with you all. So of course, when I'm thinking about that question, Ashish, I'm thinking about very specific things that folks can do. And it's not just specific to Black women, right? It affects Black women just based off of how we are positioned at work and in the workplace. But the tips that I have are for all of us to be able to use and to incorporate. The nuance is that we have to understand culture as we're working with each of our folks, right? Like, what is their perception of work? What are the messages that they have received about work? What are the messages they received about themselves as work? And and as we think about Black women in particular, there's a different perspective and mindset we have to use, particularly based off of how the United States was created and what was the role of the Black woman in the creation of the United States, right? As an enslaved person and also as a person who was giving birth to those who would also be enslaved and to build up this country. But with that in mind, I think that it's important that the tips that I provide can be used across in terms of wellness and all. One is understanding really what a person's zone of genius is, right? We have been packaged in various ways with certain ways of thinking, certain ways of learning, certain ways of communicating. And it is most important to allow our folks to be able to amplify and optimize in those places, as opposed to suppressing and trying to fit into a box. If I communicate this way, let me communicate this way and let me amplify that, as opposed to telling me I must communicate in a different way. I think the second that we've talked about here that I've been thinking about is also what Daisy mentioned around boundaries. There's 7 different types of boundaries. Most of us are only thinking about time boundaries, right? But there's more boundaries in that. There's time boundaries in terms of respecting our time and our time limits. There's consumption boundaries. What are we consuming in the environment? And that's from a sensory perspective. What are we seeing? What are we smelling? What are we hearing, right? That's important when we're talking about how we respect who our workers are and create wellness for them. Our emotional boundaries, our behavioral boundaries, our thought-based boundaries, our self boundaries, and our ego boundaries. And I think that's one of the hardest ones, right? Like we forget that that people, it is, in my opinion, as a therapist, it's inappropriate to go into the workspace with a big ego. We're supposed to be in here working together as a team, which means that there's some ebbs and flows. There's moments I lean forward and there's moments I need to lean back, and respecting when it is a person's time to lean forward and also when it's a person's time to lean back. Specifically around boundaries, we have to also acknowledge, like Daisy mentioned, that a person will cross our boundaries if we cross our boundaries first, right? If I say that I'm off work at 5 o'clock and then I send an email at 5:20, what it communicates to that person is I'm still working. And so when they email me back and I'm now emailing them back, that is more on me because I crossed my boundary first. And so making sure that we respect our boundaries as we are encouraging our folks to respect theirs. I have so many, Ashish, I'm going to be quick with the rest. Psychological safety. Kimberly mentioned psychological safety earlier, but when we're supporting people at work, especially Black women, we have to make sure that they are able to feel safe, which means that they are able to be included in all conversations that are necessary. They're able to learn. They're able to contribute. Their voice matters. Their perspective matters. You hire them not just because of their skill. You hire them because of their perspective as well. So embrace that. And then also embrace their challenge. When a person is challenging you, it's usually because they want you to grow. That coupled with understanding our ego helps us. Sometimes if our ego is too big and we feel challenged, then we feel like it's an offense as opposed to an opportunity for us to learn and grow. So making sure we have psychological safety. Earlier, Michael and I were talking about wellness by generation. So who are these people that are at work? Who are these Black women at work? Where do they sit in generational workplace understanding? Because that's going to be important to understand how to allow for wellness for who they are. A millennial performs differently and acts differently at work than me as Generation X, right? Or as my parents as boomers, like understanding what generation wellness looks like. And also assessing workflow and the assumptions that we're making as people. Specifically for Black people, there's a perception that there's a strong Black woman, right? Don't keep putting more on me just because I'm a Black woman, right? Let's divvy that out a little bit more. Don't put more on me just because you think I'm capable. Just because I have the competence to do it doesn't mean that I need to get burned out. Yes, I can do it, but let's spread the wealth a little bit more. Let's spread the responsibilities. And then lastly, just being mindful of who your person is that you're working with. Really getting to know these Black women at work, really getting to know the women that we're working with or the men that we're working with. How do they learn? What are their triggers? How do they get support? How are they being understood? Remember, support is a matter of uplifting someone. It's not giving them a handicap, right? It's helping them to continue to be great. And in order to do that, it means that you have to really understand who that person is that you are working with and what they actually need, what the empathy looks like for them, what engagement looks like for them. And that means, again, really spending time to get to know our people, not just based off of their skills and talent, but the essence of who they are, their actual purpose in this work and in this world. I know that was long. Okay, I'm gonna sit back. I'll see you.
I love that. You said ego 3 times in that discussion, which I think is so interesting because I'll give you a story. When during COVID, the state of Virginia asked me to talk about diversity and inclusion at the time with Consciously Unbiased. And so they asked me point blank, how do you think we can get along better with each other? And I was like, if you want me to be really honest, we got to get over ourselves. Like my decision isn't based on you have no influence on me in that sense. And so if we realize that our decisions aren't about each other, then we just can focus on how to talk to each other better, and it's really about your ego.
Which is a matter of constructive leadership, right, Ashish? Like when we have a constructive leadership style, it's that we are building something together. And that I recognize that my job, it may be the supervisor or maybe the manager. So on paper, there is a hierarchical element. There is a legal responsibility. There's other things that are in place. But when we are building together, right? And in
Yeah.
order to build together, I need to know what your tools are. I need to know what your skills are, right? Like a plumber can't act like an electrician. You know what I mean? And if this is my lane and this is my work, then see me fully for who I am and utilize me there, as opposed to asking me to be suppressed in another area or asking me to do more than what I'm capable of, which will create a sense of burnout for me as well.
Yeah. And I also think we have to like use one lens on judgment, right? So an example of that is if I raise my voice and I'm strong in my opinion, you say that I'm a strong person. But then if a woman does the exact same thing, you say that she's cranky or something else, right? And so if we judge everyone in the same lens, then at least we have some consistency on like how we're implementing it, you know? That's my thought. Anyone else have to add to that? Katie, Michael, Daisy?
The only one thing I would add, and it's actually just an agreement with what Daisy and Dr. Plummer has said, is that at Maple, one of the things we introduced like a year and a half ago, because we suffered with this working from home, you don't get the benefit of a commute to kind of detach yourself from work, reset yourself, and show up for your family in a really nice way. It's pretty hard to just stand up, walk away from your desk, and then your kids are 5 feet away, and that transition is really hard.
Yeah.
We started our office is Slack. That is our digital office. That's where we go to work. We started a good morning and a good channel. And what that signals is that you post a virtual stand up in good morning. That lets the team know you're online and you're working and you're available. And you equally sign off at the end of the day in good night and say what you've accomplished. And that also signals that you are no longer available for the rest of the day. It can obviously get abused, to Dr. Plummer's point. Like if you start messaging people after you've posted in good night, it creates some exposure that you're still online. I do think it creates a really great mental separation to think like, I'm intentionally signing off, I'm saying what I shared, and I'll check back in with you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And as a team, we've learned to really respect those channels and lean in on those channels. And I think it's a practice that more virtual companies should take on, so that people aren't always on 24/7 or always are expected to be available 24/7. And that would be the only kind of thing that I add, is that I think that we've experimented with this and it's been highly successful for us.
I love that. That's a great idea.
It's also really helpful for global companies, right? Because we're talking about remote and hybrid work, but you know, I've led teams where I didn't share daylight hours with my team members in parts of the world that they were in, and you know, and being able to be respectful of when you're scheduling meetings, right, and not making all the meetings always at 9 a.m. You know, their standard time. You know, happy for what's happening to others on the West Coast, what's happening to others in other parts of the world. So I do think that element as well. You know, when we talk about virtual, we forget about the geographic and really just like daylight hours that we don't share.
100%, for sure.
Yeah. And just to add one point on that, I mean, we're a super global company. We, you know, as a business, we operate in like, you know, over 150 markets. We have offices all over the place, headquarters sort of split between Stockholm and New York. And so, you know, I often am waking up in New York to like half a day's worth of work and correspondence to catch up with from my colleagues in London and Stockholm. And, you know, same goes for our colleagues in JPAC and in the Middle East. And so it's, you know, we've had to be very intentional about setting sort of communication norms, because asynchronous communication is our norm in a lot of ways. And that sort of is inherently challenging to boundaries, but it is just the nature and the reality of like how we have to run and how we have to operate. And it's challenging, but I think once people start to hit a rhythm of like, okay, I know that if it's like, you know, like today, for example, every Thursday I have a 7:30 meeting, but I know that I can work from home on that day, and I'll front load all my European or, you know, sort of non-New York time zone friendly meetings into the morning, and know that in the afternoon I have the space and flexibility to, you know, sign off a little bit early or just catch up on stuff, or, you know, take the time that I need. So I think we really try to sort of normalize that, and not just for senior people, for, you know, for everybody, because we are always operating with a fully global sort of distribution.
Yeah. I love that. And the flexibility is important, especially when you're going global. Kimberly, catalyst Catalyst research finds that inclusive workplaces increase the overall employee wellness by 43%. How is inclusion and belonging related to well-being in the workplace?
Well, I think inclusion and belonging is key to well-being in the workplace. From a leadership and culture perspective, I really hope that companies really embrace communication. So like Katie was just saying, if someone is, working with folks all over the world, perhaps they communicate in their email signature their work hours or the timing that they're working so that people understand that. And they also communicate, just because I email you at this time doesn't mean I expect a response back at this time.
Yeah.
And so that from information that it's flowing, that it's clear, that it's timely, and that feedback again is a two-way channels, making sure that as Dr. Plummer and I talked about already, the psychological safety is there where staff can share concerns without any fear of repercussions. And that if there's a conflict, that it's addressed early and respectfully instead of buried. Because I've never seen any opportunity that I've ever been a part of a conflict, if it's not taken care of the right way and people try to bury it, it always surfaces back to the top.
Yeah. Interesting. And we always forget about inclusion and belonging, but have you guys ever seen a sports team win a championship that hasn't gotten along with each other?
Not usually. No. And I really think those that gel better do better together as a team.
Yeah. And
whether they win or they lose.
Yeah, 100%. What's one well-being trend you hope that organizations adopt for in 2026?
I'm really hoping that organizations train their leaders to solve problems. I believe all of us have talked about the fact that leadership has such an impact on well-being for folks, that if leaders were trained to appropriately manage, I think their staff would have better well-being.
Yeah.
If leadership made sure to have one-on-ones with their staff and make sure to give them that time to let the staff speak, I think that would also be very helpful to well-being. And having that honesty and transparency in feedback. And, it's not easy. I mean, it's definitely not easy to tell someone that they're not doing a great job when they think they are.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, when a promotion comes and they don't get it, that's much worse, in my opinion. So that's something that I'm hoping leaders will do in 2026.
Interesting. And also, if you think about, we're already feeling pressure as peers to work harder, longer, and then potentially burn out. And now you have this generational change that could happen in the next 2 years where you're now competing for your job with AI, which also is there's no work-life balance there. You're not going to win in that, right? So in the age of AI and automation, how can leaders support the human connection? And why might well-being focused leadership be even more crucial with AI coming about?
Well, I think to support that human connection, I think we have to remind employees that AI is a tool.
Yeah.
Because AI is never going to replace humans. It will enhance us. It can make us better. It can make us be able to work on different things because maybe, for example, some of the administrative things could be taken care of for us. But at the end of the day, that human interaction, I really just don't feel that AI can replace that. Getting to know your employees, understanding when they're having a good day and a bad day, understanding what they're carrying on their plate. I just don't think that AI can solve that problem for us.
Mm-hmm.
However, it can take work off our plate so we have more time, as you mentioned before, about more time to have these conversations and solve these problems.
Mm-hmm. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Oh man, this might be controversial. I think that there's a very, very, very big chance that generationally. So let me take a step back. I think there's a short-term response and a long-term response.
Sure.
I think that for all of us on this call, we have become so familiar with the human experience, being human to human, that it feels unfathomable to be replaced. at a relationship level with AI. But like my kids also are a era of children that will never know life without a smartphone, or never know life without a phone on a wall in my house, or a payphone, right? So like there's things that I've experienced that they'll never experience, and there's things that they're going to experience that I won't be able to understand. I think when you look at OpenAI's recent paper about how people are using ChatGPT, a lot of them are turning it to mental health and getting some guidance. And I do think that AI, for better or for worse, plays a unique role in democratizing access and giving people the ability to level the playing field, whether that's from financial guidance or mental health guidance or creativity outlets or whatnot. And so I do think it's a tool. I think that we have to greatly embrace it and use it to our advantage to scale in a lot of ways. My bigger thing is that regardless of AI or not, what oftentimes happens with technology as we become more siloed and more isolated is that we lose our edge of empathy, and we lose our ability to exercise kindness. And the question about like what could leaders be doing in 2026 with or without AI, I think it's actually more of like a social issue that we're facing outside of work. It's just like across the board within life, we're going through this very large transformative era over however many years, where we've just like lost the human touch to like be kind to one another. And that's really, really sad, in my opinion. I just think that like we just have to get back to the bare basics. I love that saying, like everyone has something going on in their home behind closed doors. And it's just so true. And I just think that we could approach work and life and relationships through a softer lens. And that's just like a weird lost art, is like being a kind person has become rare, and it shouldn't be. So I think that that's what I kind of hope for my children and for the people around me, is just to live a life of empathy and to try to practice kindness.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've kind of lost community and village, right? And part of it's because we used to have to go pick up our laundry and go to this grocery store and meet people. And like now
it's all just washing away. It's like it's such a weird world that we live in, because we are in a transition in a lot of ways from what has been to what will be. I just think that like we can have more like balance with it.
Yeah.
I love that, Michael. And I actually don't call it a transition. I call it a messy middle.
Yeah.
we're in a messy middle right now between the old systems and practices and perhaps what some of us may think of as nostalgically, right? How we engage and how we work, between what has yet to be built and happening in real time. Some of it is, much of it, I think, is happening very clumsily, right? As people are figuring it out. But I think that my answer, Ashish, to your question was around energy, but now I'm thinking a lot more around this sense of empathy around connection, because that's a lot of what we're missing. And I see it in my teenager and how they engage. I see it, quite frankly, in new entrants to the workforce who have never worked the way that many of us were, and the challenges of return to offices for those who are returning to offices, which is pretty much what's really going to be happening in most workplaces right now. And I was like, I'm a proponent of being in the office, not every day, but because we have to learn, like teach each other and reteach each other how we work and how we engage and how we connect. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves, and as an HR practitioner, I was like, remind ourselves of why we work where we work, and why we come to workplaces to do the things that we can't do by ourselves. Hopefully that's something that an AI or an agent can't do for us. But it's why we come to these workplaces, and that's the energy that comes from that, right? And the kindness that you speak of, Michael, and that empathy, that gets built through connection, right? That gets built by seeing and being with each other, and by understanding the different weights that people operate with, right? And it's much easier to be mad at someone and to be cruel to someone that you do not know well and that you do not have a connection with. It's much harder if I know Ashish and I know his family and I know things, right? I will engage very differently with him. And I do agree with you, Michael, that we are at risk of losing that with this disconnection. But that's why I think this sense of connection and bringing us back, and this trying to eradicate the loneliness that has become a workplace risk and that leads to burnout and disengagement, right? It is by building strategies like purposeful gatherings, right? Not just bringing people together for the sake of it, right? But you're being intentional, Michael, in your organization, and when you do the events based on people's rhythms and their responsibilities. But like, how do we create moments where people actually share parts of who they are? How do we do it in cross-team circles so it's not the same teams always doing it together, right? So that whenever when a project gets lost, when a deadline gets missed, you're not just mad at that other team and you're blaming it on the other team. You actually know that other team, and you're going to be like, okay, what's up? What's going on? Why did you miss that deadline? You made me miss my deadline. I'm not gonna add to the interpersonal tension. I'm actually going to try and bridge those gaps so that we can build those moments of connection. And I think that's a lot of what we're missing in the workplace right now.
And it's kind of interesting when we think about it too, because these tools have been put in place, AI in particular, to make things more convenient for us. But what is actually, and with that convenience, ideally you have more time to build out who you are, who you want to be, how you connect with others, that balance and harmony in other parts of your life. But instead, we're using all this extra free time to do more work, right? And that goes exactly to what you all are talking about in terms of burnout. I don't have this tool so that I could do more work. I have this tool so I could have more life. You know what I mean? So I could do more things in my life. And I think that it's important for leaders to think about that too. Productivity is not just what we produce out on paper. It's how our people feel when they come to work. It's how they engage with each other. It's about the retention that they have there. Like, I think that it's a mindset shift. And to Ashish's point earlier, I get really passionate about it. I know you guys are like, what is she talking about? So, but to a conversation that Ashish and I had earlier, oftentimes leaders are not getting the proper training in terms of being leaders. They are good at a skill, and so they get promoted, right? But are they actually being trained in understanding people and interpersonal connections and learning styles and communication styles and respecting boundaries and having harmony? Like, all of this that we're talking about, it's all good and dandy, but are we requiring leaders to actually do it? How are we assessing their effectiveness in just engaging with people and teams? And I know this question was about AI, and I get a little nervous when it comes to AI and mental health. So when Michael started talking, I was like, oh, wait, what are we talking about here? But it is important that we use the tool for what it is, and it is not to replace human connection at all, nor is it to make a person feel like they have to work more because they have more time. We should be able to be human, right? We should be able to feel good and not just be a machine that's producing all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Katie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm sure we're all talking about this topic endlessly, AI. But I think there's also, like, just bringing this back to sort of the wellness, sort of, how this relates to wellness. Like, I think there's like a business imperative to focus on wellness as AI gets more and more prominent, and as we all get more and more comfortable with how we use it in the day-to-day at work. Because, the conventional wisdom at this point is that, like, we're only going to be placing more and more of a premium on skills like creativity, judgment, systems thinking, trust building, like all of these things that AI can't do. And you can't be empathetic, creative, strategic, strong communicator, all these things, if you're not well, if you're burnt out, if your tank is empty, if you are like on a razor's edge, like, you're going to, like, leaders, like, we will all lose the collective advantage, like the collective intelligence of great, AI's taken the stuff out that can be automated, that is day to day, and we can do the superhuman stuff that is really about connection, and ultimately being able to move with speed, because you need trust to be able to move with speed. You need to be systems thinkers to move with speed. And that's really sort of like that's what every leader I'm talking to today, is concerned with. Like, are we moving fast enough? Are we moving fast enough? And I think the answer can be yes, assuming you're using AI for the right things so that you can enable people to use the skills that will allow you to be fast. But your people have to be like, their cups have to be full in order for those sort of more creative, like truly human skills to be able to flourish. So
I love that. And I love the systems thinking concept around it too, because I could tell you that we tend to just do things in extreme, right? So now we're just going to use AI for everything. So I'll give you an example of my team. Some people used to send me 2-line emails. Now they send me paragraphs because they put it in ChatGPT, and then I take it in ChatGPT and put it back and say, summarize it to 2 lines. And so we've created more work. And so like, you really need to, like, there's this fear that if we don't use it, we're going to lose, but there should be this reality of, let's use it properly in an efficient way so it's actually leveraged, but not to create fear and anger and inefficiencies. And so I think the wellness part of that is like to get rid of that anxiety that I have to use this when I shouldn't need to use it in certain places. I don't know. Dr. Mary, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about, how, what can we tell companies to do tactically to make sure there's time and space for employees to connect as human beings. And this is to kind of, this doesn't just speak to the era of AI and automation. It's also like, people have a lack of time to connect because of burnout, because of long hours culture, because of always on culture. And so I want, it's like, I want leaders to think about, like, how can they regularly set up events that are during the workday that are inclusive of everyone, that include virtual employees as well as in person. And then I know ERGs, employee resource groups, they've been around for a long time, but there's a lot of research showing that they are really, really helpful in supporting human connection. And so I want to kind of put in a pitch to companies to really make sure that ERGs are well resourced, and that people have time and space to go and spend time with people in their ERGs. And then my organization, Lean In, we run a network of peer mentorship groups called Circles. And this is a global community. There are over 140,000 of these groups have been set up. So you become part of a global community, but also Circles, because they're kind of, they're peer groups of people who come together to learn and grow together. They often last for a long time. We know of groups that have been going for 10 years. So they become this kind of cross-career support system that people carry with them. I think finding, Circles are just one way to do this, but like finding time and space to connect with coworkers about things related to your work, but also just about like who you are as a human being. I think that just has so much value, and I don't want to get lost.
I love that. So we're getting close to time. I wanted to end it with each of you to kind of tell me what's one well-being trend or initiative that you think the organization should put in 2026. Dr. Tola, do you want to start with that?
Oh, yeah, sure. I would love to. Well, this kind of goes back to things we were talking about earlier. And this is, it's funny to call it a trend, but I would like companies to really reflect on how to avoid rewarding like long hours, always on culture, and to stop rewarding overwork. And I was thinking of this partly because I just read a study that came out recently showing that like out there in the world, companies still do reward overwork. You're going to get promoted more quickly if you're the person working like 16 or 20-hour days as opposed to less. And then that ends up being very unfair because not everyone can do that. And so I'd like the trend to be companies reward people for absolutely killing it within their working day, and not by, working overnight and weekends.
I love that. Kimberly?
I'm going to quote Maya Angelou on this one, with her quote that I've learned that people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So the trend that I'm hoping is that we can train our leaders and teach our leaders to make people feel seen, heard, valued, and celebrated.
I love that. And Daisy?
My trend is steady leadership. I think that we've been spending a lot of time on prepared leadership and technologically savvy leadership, but I think we need that kind of steady leadership that calms the room, that builds the path, and that takes people to the other side. So that kind of nervous system, energy based leadership that I think all of us crave. Not bring the last crisis with us to the next one.
Definitely. Well said. Dr. Plummer?
Absolutely. I want us to use our calendars. I want us to schedule a break every day. I want us to schedule when we are ending our day. To the point earlier, those visible reminders become boundary settings. And when we have them out there, we respect our boundaries better and other people respect our boundaries. So while everybody may not take lunch at the same time, lunch should be on that calendar. You need time to eat. You need a reset in the middle of the day. You need time to drink. You need time to have to do a quick walk. And at the end of the day, you need time to really close down that computer. Like you heard Daisy say, close down your mind, compartmentalize that work. And I think that's easily done by using our calendars and respecting what's on our shared calendars.
I love that. And Michael?
I was over here just trying to figure out how I can consolidate what I want to say. Maybe like the best example is I'm sure you've seen those signs that people have in warehouses or factories where it has a day count, days without injury, and that's celebrated for creating a safe environment. My personal goal every year is to make sure that my teammates at Maple never miss a life moment. I remember sitting on an airplane with a colleague who was crying. Because
Oh, you went on mute.
Oh, was I on mute the entire time?
No, just when you're probably going to say a colleague is
I
crying.
was sitting on an airplane with a colleague who was crying because their child had just taken their first steps, and they had missed that. And that was a profound moment for me because I didn't have children yet, but I just have always thought about this woman who flew to a town for a lunch meeting that probably doesn't matter anymore. But forever in her life, she'll be thinking about the fact that she missed her kid's first steps. So I just hope that more leaders recognize that there's finite moments in life that shouldn't be deprioritized and should be celebrated in their staff getting to enjoy those moments of life. So we're trying to go 365 days every year to allow our team members to have those life moments without consequence.
Amazing. And Katie?
I would love for there to be more flexibility. I think RTO is trending. I would love for it to detrend. I, like you, Daisy, I think I am a believer in the value of being in person to an extent. I think COVID proved to us beyond a shadow of a doubt that we can generally get ourselves and be pretty successful in a flexible environment if we use our judgment and, operate with respect and strong communication. And I have like a very, very deep personal belief that flexibility with regards to where you work and when and how you go into an office enables wellness and is one of the biggest tools that we have to ensure our fairness and equity in the workplace. So I would love to see less RTO, more thoughtful measures around flexibility.
I love that. Well, thank you, everyone. This is a very insightful and dynamic conversation. I really enjoyed it, and we're honored to have you on the LinkedIn Live today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.